which is "The future is now. Build strong experiences to drive engagement." The moderator for this discussion, and I warmly welcome him, Mr. 𝗬𝘂𝗍𝗲𝗍, Customer Transformation Adobe, IBM Consulting, India, South Asia. Let's give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. And the panelists are Mr. Nikhil Shanker, who we just heard from, Ms. Nidhi Chadha, Head of Customer Success, Reliance Jio. There she is. Let's welcome her with a warm round of applause. And Mr. Ashish Himthani, Head Customer Experience Service, Tata Click.
Hey, Swati, good to see you. Good to see you. Great session. Thank you. Hi. Please. Good to see you, Ashish. Thank you. Okay.
I request our moderator to kindly take this ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. I think we've heard a lot about CX. We've heard a lot about the success mantra, the approaches we might need to take. But what we'll do, or we'll spend the next few minutes with the panelists on trying to understand from them how they made it happen within their own organizations, right? But before we start, right, let's flip it around. And normally you ask questions. Let's post one question to you. There was this quote which says that before you start with customer experience, right, you need to, you start with the customer experience in mind and then work backwards to the technology. Can you tell me who's made this statement? It's a famous personality. This table, I'm sure, would know it, but no? This was Steve Jobs, yeah. It was Steve Jobs, and he's the one who's made this statement, and he said, you start with the customer experience, work backwards. And we all know why Apple as a product is really successful that way, right? So that, with that being the context, what I'd like to hear from the panelists is, customer focus is kind of, it's a given these days, right? It's there, everybody has to be doing it. Now, there's no longer, given the pandemic that we have experienced and the interactions that we've had with, or rather the limited interactions we've had with our customers. What is it that you as customer experience evangelists within your organizations have done to ensure that you are able to still deliver the right kind of experience within your organizations? How have you aligned yourself internally from a process or a people perspective or a technology perspective, right? We'd like to hear from you, what is it that you've done and how have you managed to get to where you are in being known as, from morning session that I heard, more like the CX champions, right? So spend a couple of minutes, each of you, on that would help you. Yeah, you can start.
Okay, I think we've heard enough on the industry part. Let me contextualize it for how we've done it for Tata Click. So I think rightly mentioned by Nikhil in the session that if you have finite resources, then how do you actually go about it, right? So you have to ensure there's maximum ROI, you have to ensure the right set of customers. So what we've essentially done is come up with a 3E strategy for our brands, right? So we've got Tata Click like a marketplace where we have all the fashion and lifestyle brands, typical, e-commerce. So the strategy there is efficiency. So efficiency is primarily because, we got to play at scale, and so between people, process and technology, I think technology plays a big part there in terms of adopting digital, using self-service methods on IVR, chatbots, so on and so forth, right? The second E is for Tata Click Luxury. So luxury is again a different brand altogether. The customer segment is entirely different. So what we've done is, it is an experience-based strategy there. We've had a lot of touch points where there are a lot of proactive communications happening, a lot of contextual and personalized empathy-based approach to those set of customers. And then the third E is expertise, which is for the newly launched beauty business that we have, which is Tata Click Palette, right? So we've gone with efficiency for marketplace, experience for luxury, and expertise for palette, where you need to actually give contextualized solutions to the beauty customers. knowing their choices, preferences, knowing their skin type, so on and so forth. So that's the kind of strategy that we've operated in. So between the mix of people, process and technology, we just kind of amp up technology a little in marketplace, amp up processes and people in luxury and beauty. So that's how we kind of, gone about it.
Fantastic. That kind of ties in very well with all customers are equal, but some are more equal than others, right? Fantastic, thanks for that. And Swathi, of course, your sessions are more, your company, in fact, has been known as a disruptor, right? And kind of the way they acquired customers is like, it's there as a benchmark for many of us. And you've done the right thing. So I'd like to hear from you how you managed to retain your customers.
Yeah, hi. This is Nidhi. I have been working with a few of the telecom companies. Why I'm here is that I've worked with Reliance Jio from the beginning of the launch and have seen the transformation that India has witnessed in past 6 years. What our strategy was that we have enabled the masses, in fact the entire country, through our GPON, microwave and IP network, which has been available, which is able to cover the entire masses and being available across. That has been our strategy. And earlier it was 4G, 4th generation network, and now it is going to be 5th generation network with a very large bandwidth and very low latency, which will enable people, organization to improvise their processes through the infrastructure which is available wide across.
Oh, fantastic. Because that's I'm sure 5G is going to be the next bet for everybody focusing on customer experience. How can you make it more real time in terms of providing the right feedback?
The main thing is the real time, as my colleagues have spoken in the earlier times, that we will be needing customer service at any time of the day. So we need machines to interact on a real time basis with a minimal latency, and that can only happen through 5G as a network.
Absolutely, perfect. I think a couple of the speakers also alluded to that, right? Especially the previous one with Sumit Devan spoke about on the connected vehicles as well. And I spoke to Mr. Menon also on how they're trying to do it for Hyundai as well, right? They want to get real-time feedback so that they can advise the customers right then and there, more from a predictive maintenance perspective. I think, yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Nikhil.
Yeah, I think on this, we've obviously discussed people, process, technology. In my view, the largest unlock and starting point and journey to overall unlock this is culture of customer obsession. When a team, whether it's 5-member or if it's 5-member, if it's a 5-member company, much simpler. When it becomes a 500-member company, slightly more complex. When it becomes a 5,000-member company, way more complex, and obviously it's exponentially more complex. And hence, the establishment of a culture which is customer obsessed from the beginning, from when the first person, the first 3 people started a company, to when it becomes a much, much larger company. I think that driving that culture and establishing that ethos as a way of working where everyone thinks customer first, everyone focuses on doing right by the customer. If someone feels that there's something happening which is in the interest of the company but not in the interest of the customer, and they voice their concern and their reason against that, and if that culture gets built from the beginning, everything else can follow. Like the engineering team will build the right tech because they'll be obsessed about the customer. The customer experience team will kick people's ass because they will be obsessed about the next customer whose experience went bad. Every single touch point will become obsessed about doing their job with a customer lens in mind. And through that, everything else will get enabled way more strongly and exponentially than, yeah.
Good, fantastic. I think that's you touched upon this point on every touch point being a very critical critical factor in the process. Right? Building on that, the point is customer expectations also are always dynamic in its form. Right? They're always like a moving horizon. It's like today it is X, tomorrow it's going to be Y, and it's just going to keep evolving. Now, how do you, I mean, I'm sure, and we mentioned in the morning that surveys are no longer the only way to kind of get feedback. There are multiple ways you get this feedback. You have so many touch points. It could be when they're accessing your app or your website or talking to your customer service. Now, and there's so much more data that's being generated, right, at each of these points, especially, and all of you are dealing with millions of customers, right, and that's a huge level of data that you're getting. Now, what is it that you're doing to operationalize this feedback, right, in whatever form you're getting it? It's not that somebody is responding to a survey saying this is my experience or my expectation, but you're inferring from the data that's been there. Now, what have you done in each of your organizations to understand your customer better, and what is it that you do, or rather take feedback from that and realign yourselves to kind of deliver that much needed experience?
So I think this is a two-pronged challenge, and I think many of the panelists kind of highlighted the first part, which is the siloed presence of data across different functions. So, you know, some teams will have your Play Store reviews, some teams will have your NPS feedback, some teams will have your DSAT data at customer service, so on and so forth, right? So this is one big challenge. And the other, what we had initially observed was diffusion of accountability when it comes to turning those insights into actions. Because see, generating insights is just one part of the problem. It equally matters how you take those insights and turn them into actions. How do you actually do an RCA-based process fixing, so on and so forth. So what we eventually ended up doing was, rather than having those siloed sets of data and then maybe working with different teams, what we did was we kind of established a centralized team which acts across the org, which is called Customer Insights. What they eventually do is, so now they are my custodians of unstructured voice of customer, unstructured voice of customer, and structured VOC, right? So when I say structured, it's primarily NPS data, DSAT data coming in from customer support, Play Store ratings and installs and uninstalls data. And when I talk about unstructured VOC, it's primarily negative sentiment from Twitter, Facebook, all the social forums, subjective content, and a lot of call analytics. So there are speech minor tools, used to basically detect negative sentiment from calls, where actually the pitch or the tonality is higher, so on and so forth. So you basically detect what kind of calls are attracting negative sentiment, so on and so forth. So once this centralized team has access to all that negative sentiment data, positive sentiment data, what they end up doing is they kind of narrow down on a set of customers. And they not only just work towards fixing those problems, they'll also outcall those set of detractors, as we call it, and it's not just NPS detractors, it's overall my negative sentiment customers for the month. They'll do the outcalls, they'll understand what the real concern was, they'll work towards, they'll work backwards with supply chain teams, category teams, tech teams to fix certain items, and then they'll also make sure the customer is being made aware about the process fix, so on and so forth. So eventually, what initially started was more of a cost-driven, centralized insights team. Eventually, they ended up over the year interacting with almost 12,000 such detractors. And one of the metrics that they tracked was detractor win back, that how many of those detractors eventually make a repurchase within your platform for the next 90 days. Okay. So it kind of operated almost at 40%, so that out of those 12,000 detractors, we ended up generating incremental sales worth 3 CR for the year. So the cost center turned into a profit center via centralized insights functions.
That's a good way of monetizing the data that you've got.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nidhi?
For us, the revolutionizing practice was self-care. I think that one app which further spells into multiple chat, IM, voice services, everything which further gets through there, that creates the biggest single point contact to connect with the customer. Okay. And then through there, we have further moved. There is a People Connect also, which is available across the country through various stores, where a physical connect is also available, but primarily the entire functionality gets driven through a self-care app, which has various modalities to reach for subsequent tickets which are extensively required. It is strongly backed by the CRM system, which is integrated to the app to provide the earliest resolution to our customers.
Okay, that's good. And do you also use this data ultimately, and Jio's launching multiple products? Is this feedback also being used to introduce newer products or getting into new models of engagement?
Definitely, definitely. So whatever cross pitching definitely happens. It's very easy to reach, and we can watch the trend, what customer has been using, and what is his pocket spend. So
yeah, perfect. I think interesting.
I think very valid points is being able to capture data at various touch points and being able to use that both for insights and actioning. And in our case, we, especially because we are app-based, and a very tech-first platform, we have that luxury and that benefit of having a ton of data flowing to us, and at any time having real insights. A couple of learnings though that have helped us. One, that for whatever we do, we will do an A/B. So it just helps us understand what we're doing is right with very immediate feedback through A/B tests. And whether it's a technology implementation or a process implementation or some XYZ, we rely quite heavily on getting proof of the pudding very quickly, and A/B tests help us do that. And second, keeping it very real, that almost all of us take our own services to know what is working and what is breaking. We do a lot of physical on-ground customer visits to stay in touch with what is actually happening, and that keeps strengthening our intuition to further deep dive and take decisions. So that just forms a great starting point to keep it real and authentic in how we understand insights and continue to build for the customer.
Fantastic, thanks. I mean, valuable points in terms of how do you keep it kind of realistic also, right? So, given that all of you are, all your companies at least focus heavy on the innovation side of things, right? What would you like to see in the CX technologies that you can adopt, or the processes that you might kind of put forward within your organizations? The future of CX, this is what I would like to see. This is what I think is missing piece of the puzzle that's going to help me make that next leap into delivering the right customer experience. Do you have any views on what you plan for within your organization? Be the tools, could be a different business model itself, right? So you have anything of those in mind when you've planned for, from a customer experience perspective? Say something like AR, VR, right? Jio, I'm sure, would be doing or supporting things like how AR, VR could enable better customer service or customer experience when a retailer would come into a store, right? So are these something that are more realistic, or is it something that we are ahead of its time, or any comments on that? Anybody?
So I think from a tech perspective, while I would not call these short to medium term interventions as the long term strategy. If I talk about RPA, or if I talk about cloud telephony migration, or even technologies like agent assist for that matter, that agents are getting real-time intuitive guidance as and when they are actually talking to the customers. So there are technologies which kind of help you enable that, navigate through complex workflows, and get customers the right kind of resolutions. I think while all of these are some kind of pilot projects and experiments for us in short to medium term, in the long run, where we actually envisage our CS of the future is more from a people and process angle, that we actually want those super advisors or super agents for that matter. So today, although we would operate across different channels like chat, social, email, and voice, so on and so forth, but there are siloed teams because again, skill